Hello. So we are at our property in eastern Washington that burned in 2020, the Pearl Hill fire. It's the property sits on the Columbia above the Chief Joseph Dam, and that's kind of the view out. That's Chimney is where the house was. There was a really awesome custom log home, and then there was an original homestead that was an old farmhouse, like 120-year-old, and there were two barns and 6.5 miles of fence line, and it all burned up in 2020. And it was my husband's father's property. He lived here and ran cattle and horses. And when it burned up, they bought a place on the western part of the state over closer to the family. And then when he passed away, he gave this property to my husband. It's 400 acres. It's a hunting property. Pretty much now we do plan on cleaning up and building and moving here in a few years when we're closer to retirement. We can both, I work from home and he has the opportunity to be able to work from home. His boss is open to the idea, so we might be able to move here before retirement, which would be amazing. But we have a lot of cleanup to do, but we have plans for a house and we have plans going forward. But I wanted to talk about wildfire and the garden. This used to be an amazing garden property because I think it's zone 6B, but it gets really hot in the summertime. You can see it's probably about 84 right now. But all of the fruit, there's a pretty good sized orchard here, and all of the fruit trees got some kind of fire damage. But we've never had nectarines on this tree in the 5 years we've had the property. But we started putting water to these trees about 2 or 3 years ago. We just run a soaker hose, and this year this thing is not loaded with nectarines, but there's a fair amount of nectarines on this tree. It's pretty awesome. We have to pick them this weekend because they're starting to fall on the ground. Which is bad. We've already picked up probably 15 or 20 off the ground that didn't get any damage. So I plan to freeze some and make jelly out of some and eat a bunch fresh. They're not super sweet, which is fine with me. I'm not a huge fan of super sweet fruit, but they are really good. There's a bunch of apple trees. This one's got quite a few apples growing on it. There's a ton of cherries on that cherry tree. We did get about a gallon of cherries before they went bad, but this is about 300 miles from where we actually live, so it's hard to get over here. We try to get over here at least once a month in the summertime. But sometimes if we have other vacations planned, it's hard to get here. So we miss some of the fruit. There's a peach tree in there that hasn't gotten any peaches. We do run water to this area too. There's a soaker hose running to these trees. There's this elm that got half burned up. There's a camper that we put up there that we stay in when we come. It's permanently there. It doesn't move. It's gonna stay there. And then there's a pine tree by the camper that's dead that needs to come out. There's walnut trees back there that are half dead, but they still get walnuts. This pine, I think, made it. There's a lot of new growth on it, but it's dead halfway up. There's poplars behind there that didn't make it, and then there's some random fruit trees along here. There's pears, and this other apple right here that gets a ton of apples on it. And there's a rhubarb up here that made it through the fire that I got about 7 gallons of rhubarb off this spring. And we've already made a pie, and a bunch of it's frozen. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with it yet. But it's over here. This is all a spring-fed property. So there's a cistern up here that feeds the house and the homestead area. And the rhubarb kind of gets the edges of it. So it's towards the end, it's done. But that's the rhubarb. There's grasshoppers everywhere. It's gotten eaten But yeah, it's at the end, but there's still, I could probably still pick some of that rhubarb out of there. But this tree, it looks like a plum. It's got some fruit on it, but it's got major fire damage. But life just wants to persist. This tree's got quite a few plums, and we're gonna keep our eye on those. Yeah, there's a bunch of plums up in here. It's crazy. This tree looks dead. Half of it's completely dead. But it's on the edge of where the cistern overflows because nothing's hooked to it, so it just gets too full and overflows and runs down this little hill. And so these fruit trees and rhubarb along here get plenty of water. We don't run water to any of this stuff. So here's kind of a view of the property. That's my husband coming down the hill. He's mowing the road. There's a road that runs up to the top. It's about a mile up to the very top of the property. And there's a ton of wildflowers. I picked a bunch, and I'm trying to look them up with an app to see the names of everything. And I'd like to show everybody just what's blooming right now. I mean, it's towards the end of the season. Soon it's going to be completely brown and dry here, but it's still really green. This is the 6th of July, 7th of July. And it's still really green here, amazingly. And there's a ton of wildflowers still blooming. So June is the biggest month for wildflowers. So I want to do a video and show what's blooming right now and just the variety of life on this place. It's pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing. This is one of my favorite things on this property that everyone else hates. These giant Jurassic cotton thistles. And I understand why people hate these. They're intrusive, they're prickly, they hurt, they get everywhere, they grow, but they are stunning. They're just beautiful. And there's a wasp right there on one of them. But these are full of bees. There's just tons of bees. Pollinators love these, so that's kind of another thing that endears me to them. These are conservatively 8 feet tall. And they're just crazy. I'm in charge of mowing most of the area down around the homestead because I can't do a lot of hard work. I'm an old lady, but I can mow. So I mow a lot, and I leave patches of these, which pisses everybody off. But I'm okay with that. Oh, look at this gorgeous bee. What is that? That is stunning. Wow. Look at the orange on that guy. That's the most beautiful bee I've ever seen in my life. There's another smaller one. That is gorgeous. Okay, just wanted to show. Wildfire can wipe out your place, but if, like, this cherry tree is more than half dead and it's got a ton of cherries on it over here. The part that lived is just loaded with cherries. These are really dark. And you could probably get cherries off here, but they're pretty overdone. They're pretty past, and the birds are eating them, so I'm fine to let the birds have them. But look at this branch. It's just loaded with cherries. That's crazy. Life persists. Life wants to keep going, even though a lot of the trees are totally burned up. That little patch right there is still trying really hard to live. And I think those might be in the way of where we're going to build our new house. So unfortunately, those might have to come out, but they're going to stay until they absolutely have to go because they are trying hard to survive. And I think it's amazing. Life wants to persist, everybody. So wildfire is devastating, but it also is refreshing for the landscape. And a lot of the things growing up wild wouldn't be growing if that fire hadn't come through because the sagebrush was just choking out everything. So I'll do a video later. We'll drive up the hill maybe towards sunset and I'll show you the wildflowers up there. So that's just a little taste of what's going on at the ranch. Happy gardening.